Hey everybody, this is the Innovation Conversation live from the National Grocers Association show in Las Vegas. Tom Furphy.
Hey,
it's great
Kevin.
to be
Good to
together.
see you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I want to talk a little bit about, this has been an interesting few days. And yes, there's a lot of, good feelings, everybody's together, and the floor is interesting, a lot of techtechnology.
Good
stuff
energy.
Like that. Yeah,
A lot of good
really
energy.
good energy
Yeah.
and great participation from retailers. A lot of retailers in the room. But I have to say that I'm concerned a little bit because I do have I have this just general feeling of, for lack of a better term, incrementality on the part of the people who are here, who are thinking to themselves, I need to make an incremental change here. I have to do a little bit here. I have to do, and I think all that stuff's important. But I wonder about, larger vision in terms of where do these folks think their stores should be and will be, 5 years from now.
Yeah, that's a good point. We had the pandemic brought like significant change, right? And we responded to that as an industry, and we leapt well forward in what we were doing, particularly around e-commerce and in various kind of programs and whatnot across the store. And I do think you're seeing now it's more kind of nipping and tucking, kind of trimming around the edges in the experience, and kind of less looking out, to what are we going to do next to really move the needle for our customer? What are we going to do to really kind of blow them away and give them an experience that they don't have today, that will wow them and that they'll truly value from us? Yeah, I do. I think that's, while there's been a good energy here,
right.
And I think there's also been a very kind of a recognition of the importance of data, the importance of removing friction. You guys talked about that yesterday. You and Michael talked about that yesterday. In experiences, in the comfort of having, digital commerce and retail media and using data and technology more in your business. We're seeing, again, just the incremental steps on that, not the big leap forward.
Yeah, at some level, and I can understand it, I think the notion of big, bold bets has gotten a little bit of a bad name because a lot of companies made big, Amazon's a perfect example, right? A lot of big, bold bets during the pandemic, slam into inflation, and suddenly, they're having to scale back. Yeah. And I do think I have heard retailers say this, that everybody's scaling back at this point because they see Amazon scaling back.
Right.
And yet, if you don't have a vision of where you want to go and what you want to be, and all you're doing is taking baby steps, you never know whether you're taking the baby steps in the right direction, right? You're reacting to circumstances as opposed to trying to dictate the circumstances.
Yeah, and you always, in your business, you're always going to have to react to circumstances, right? And navigate that. But I think that, we've been afraid to take the big, bold bet. And I think rightfully so. We're in a tough economic environment right now, and retailers are, they're getting squeezed on costs. They're getting squeezed on labor costs. There's uncertainty where the economy's going. Are we going to fall into a recession? And there's general worry about that. So it doesn't feel like the right time to make a big, bold bet. But I always have contended, big bets for your customer don't have to be big, expensive bets, right? Pick. Again, I always come back to customer centricity. We talked about it in our session the other day, and I've lived it so much in my career. Figure out what are the things you can do for your customer that will bring them exciting new value that you can give them ahead of your competition. Engage with them, learn what that is, and then when you determine what that is, work backward to how you're going to solve it. Right? You're going to deliver this new value to the customer. It's going to be done through, either a technology or a new program or different type of employee engagement of the customer, and then build the plan, build the pro forma. What is it going to cost to deliver that service? What is the incremental, in a good way, sales value that I'm going to get from delivering that, and how am I going to be able to measure that this worked well for the customer? Yeah. So in increased, trips from them, larger baskets, larger spend from them over time, and build that pro forma and then test it at a smaller scale, test it in a few stores in a division. But once you have completed the test, you have the metrics, and you know what? Some of the programs may not work. You may say, we tried that, and that's not going to be for us.
if it's not an experiment or a test, if you know how it's going to turn out.
Exactly, the famous Bezos quote. But when you do find, though, you will find in some of these that they do work, and the ROI is there. Once you have that unlock, realized, lean in and go. And you don't have to get hurt financially by it. You just have to, you've understood it because you have the variables. You see the customer response. Go do it. Yeah. Don't get hung up.
Maybe a perfect example of that is just before we record this, I was moderating a session on reinventing the front end. And we spent an awful lot of time, the people in the room, talking about, it's all about payment systems, it's payment and transaction fees, and that's what they wanted to talk about, and that's what the people in the audience wanted to hear about, and I get that, and I understand that, and all that's really critically important. But that's not reinventing the front end, right? No. That's just making things a little better as they exist today. And in a lot of ways, the front end, self-checkout is 30 years old, and it hasn't changed very much. Exactly. And one of the things, I threw out there was the idea that, maybe somebody's got to be thinking about, what if you were going to start from scratch and build the front end of a supermarket, what would it look like? Yeah. And you talk about doing something that's not, doesn't cost a lot of money. I threw out the idea, listen, everybody has express lanes for people who buy 10 items or fewer. By the way, it's 10 items or fewer, not 10 items or less. I'm a pain in the neck, I know. But what if you created a lane, right? And then it's for people with 25 items or more, right? And by the way, you know what that costs you? A sign.
Exactly.
It doesn't cost anything. Yep. And what would happen if you did that? Now, of course, you're going to get some pushback from some customers, like, "Hey, I have 24 items." You got to be willing to, walk the walk, right? Yeah. But if you do that, and you find that your best customers, and by the way, your best customers are the ones who have 25 items or more. If they respond to it, well, then you put it out in every store you have, or you add 2 stores or lanes, and you can move that sign around. I mean, there's so many ways to innovate around stuff like that that's totally customer centric. That has nothing to do with technology, and has nothing, and it cost almost nothing.
Well, it's a great point. I mean, the traditional front end, right? You're rewarding you're actually penalizing your most loyal customers with the largest baskets to have to go through, a check stand. Now, there are lots of retailers that, will swear by the training of their front end and the engagement of their team, with the customers, and they do want to make that a good experience for the customer, and value added in the conversation and the learning that can happen from that. But it should be the customer's choice, right? And so to give those loyal customers that choice, I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were talking in our thing yesterday when Michael and I were talking about. And I want to go back to it because I thought it was a point we didn't actually elaborate on enough, which was the person in Michael's session who said that for every $1 they spend on loyalty marketing, they see $12 back. Yeah. Totally measurable. Yep. But I think it's actually bigger than that. For every $1 you spend on anything that might make customers more loyal to you, you're going to see a return.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
It's all measurable.
It's all measurable.
Absolutely.
And if people and it's all data that companies have. Yeah. Right? It's not like they have to create a new data set. No. They just have to get it.
No. They did something to prompt the customer to do something. The customer acted by shopping. Right. Yeah. And there was a transaction value, and then you can measure that. Yeah. You can measure the impact of either that one time, or you can measure the impact of that engagement with that customer over time.
One other place I really think that retailers need to innovate around, and I think I've heard a number of people say to me here, when did NGA turn into a technology show? And in some ways, that's what it feels like.
Does right? Oh, absolutely.
Right? Totally.
Yeah.
And I do think that one of the things that they ought to do is focus on giving a component of it as being a food show, right? Yeah. What if they really dedicated themselves to saying to people, listen, every retailer should increase the quality of their food a little bit, right? And their food presentation, all those different things. Yeah. You can move the needle just by having food that tastes better, smells better. Yeah. So I think that's something they really got to focus on.
They should focus on it. There is something, like if you want to go find that here, there is some of that here. Right. But I would say maybe, I don't know how many exhibitors they had here. Let's call it 500 exhibitors. There might have been a dozen or 2 dozen exhibitors, to that end. Yeah. So absolutely should be more of that.
And you didn't smell. There was no aroma.
Very little of that. There was the Italian. There was the the Italian Chamber of Commerce,
Right.
Italian American
Yes.
Chamber. Their booth was pretty good.
Yes, but they're the Italians. You would expect that, but I do think that's something that is a model that they ought to
Absolutely.
blow up a little bit
Yeah,
and
for
do
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's been great to see you. It's
Good to
fun
see
to
you
do fun
too.
to do this live.
Yeah.
Listen, we do these conversations all the time. I think our hope is that you're going to take just a nugget here, a nugget there, move incrementally, but also have a vision.
Have a vision.
Absolutely. Anyway, that's it for this innovation conversation, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
So long, everyone.